Our next speaker is a tribal elder of the Zuni tribe. He's a man who walks in two worlds. He is a degree civil and structural engineer from New Mexico State, and he headed the Internal Housing Department of the United States government for 30 years. He's an academic, he's an engineer, he's a scientist. He was born on the Zuni reservation at a time when there was no electricity, no running water. He heard the oral histories when it was being passed down from the grandmothers and fathers, and heard all of the stories of Star Nation, of extraterrestrial contact. And those are really incredible stories because it offers a forgotten history. It offers a cultural perspective that we've lost, that white man's world does not have. And it is an incredible opportunity to hear this man who has credibility in the academic world to talk about his credible stories in the mystical world. He speaks of ceremonies, of contact with what is called the Space Brothers from an absolutely amazing perspective. So at this point, I'd like to offer a round of applause for Clifford Mahooty.
Good morning. Well, it gives me great pleasure to be seeing some of you folks again here for this year's activity. I've been working pretty hard on a lot of these interpretations throughout the years from my roots as a Zuni Indian, and also to merge the scientific world, which I had also been an academic. And so today I want to present to you just a small glimpse of my people back in Zuni, New Mexico. And I send greetings from them to you, and so we'll get started. I would like to, in all activities in the Zuni world, we open up everything with a prayer, so I will do the prayer in my language. Hana kalawas panina hom ko ani ko kana hom tonaok na pa akyon iya shuatik na honan ilo ni ko chikan hon topin da katik na luka ya to mata chu shaw iya ni kan lo kashum de ho kem kono mata chu ko ashin onan kasho ni tachili tan sitil tan to dem thana pa ana ana kala an awas panina hom ansatuna we to te ko hana yani chud. Thank you very much. What I ask for is to the opening of our hearts and our spirit, so that they can connect with us from all parts of the universe, and so we could look for their guidance and ask for their blessings, so that we can look to our Mother Earth and to all the different peoples of the planet here, so that we can all understand each other where we're going to be headed. That's a picture what I took when I started out with the Ancient Aliens. Last month when I was over in Sedona, they had a meeting, and they introduced me as an ancient alien, and I said I was only born last century. I'm not that ancient. I think it's mostly, some of you have seen me on the History Channel, and it's quite interesting. I don't know if I told you that story about before, about the time that we first did the did the first documentary over there at Chaco Canyon. The camera crew was late, and we finally got together. But we had to eat lunch first. I mean, you know, we have to do everything by time perspective. So we ate lunch and came back, and the other part of the crew was lost. So we were sitting over there, and they were looking. The first time I ever met them, and they said, and then say, they were asking me. One of the questions they asked me said that, well, why did the Chaco culture civilization leave? And I looked at this guy, and he said, "You mean you don't know?" He said, "Well, we have read so much about this, and because of drought, warfare, and all that." I said, "No. The reason they left was because they didn't have any cell phone coverage over here." I come from the Zuni Nation. If you look at the Four Corners area where Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico come together, where that dark spot is where my reservation lies, right here. A lot of people ask me how long we've been there, and I say, well, since the beginning of what we call Zuni time, and this is our what they call the center of the Zuni world, and it took many migrations to get to be that point, and there's a whole history about that in other writings. This is the coming in from the north side into the pueblo, and we have our signs just like everywhere else. And this figure up here is usually the symbol given to a lot of our different altars, different ceremonial objects, and we even have kachinas that are pretty well made in this order. And I'll get into the kachina. And so this is also a symbol of a sun, the colors of the rainbow universe. I happen to belong to the Sun Clan, and so this is very significant to a lot of our ceremonies. Now here's some of the pictures. A lot of times when we talk about rain, we talk about the rain gods. There's many kachina dances that do those type of things. And here is the mesa that's east of the village. I live about 2 or 3 miles from that mesa, and this is where has a lot of parallels with the Great Flood. And right here, there's these 2 slabs of sandstone, and in our mythology, that's the sacrifice that the priest of the Zuni people made with his son and daughter to the gods, so that during the flood age, the flood era, that he will recede. So there's quite a story behind the flood era at that time. You know, who was it that? Was it Noah's flood? That's the Bible part. And this is where a lot of your significance of what they call the plumed serpent, which is like Quetzalcoatl in our brothers to the south, Kukulkan. And I've been doing a lot of research on this thing, and it's probably also related to the dragon of the underworld from the Oriental side. I'm still going through a research on that one, but this is a very significant part of we call this the ancient mountain in Zuni. Some people call it corn mountains, but so they had a misnomer on that. The origins of the Zuni people. This is, if you read background on the Hopi, the Zuni and other Pueblo tribes, this is what we consider the fourth world, which we're in right now. And our origin is in the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is, there's a lot of background on it. The Zunis, they say, came out first, the Hopis next, and then other tribes to the south. And so this is the Colorado River, where there's a lot of significance of all the different legends and the mythology based upon our the emergence theory or mythology, and we have a lot of reference to all these different significant spots inside the Grand Canyon. One of the things that I have been looking into is the Kincaid expedition back in 1908, where they took out a lot of Egyptian artifacts. Smithsonian was part of that. And so what we have, or what I have done throughout the history of that, is that the Smithsonian had those artifacts. And when we were doing our research about 3-4 years ago, we started looking into that with the group of us that were looking into the Grand Canyon, and we found out that they said that they dumped it in the ocean, the Smithsonian. So that was also another lie. There's a portion in here where, let me go back to the Zuni clan systems. From the origin of the Zuni people into the migrations, they went to a lot of migrations, and even to this day, we talk about our brothers to the south, which would probably be the Mexican-based Indian tribes, the Incas, the Aztecs, the Mayans. I think we have also history of the Montezuma and the Aztec nations, and they were talking about their origin is probably the migrations, probably around close to the Utah, up around the Paiute Nation. So there's a lot of history related to the migration route. Now, the clan system was created right after the emergence, and these are what is left over to this day. There was two clan systems that were originated from this emergence, and these are what is existing to this day, except the last one. The Sky Clan probably became extinct probably about either in the early 1900s or late 1800s. So when I ask the grandfathers and grandmothers, it just did not continue on into this century, and we don't have anybody that belongs to that clan. Now, these are the medicine societies. This is another group that emerged from another different stargate, what we call stargates or vortices, in the Los Alamos nuclear labs, where they got Los Alamos, New Mexico area. And these are the ones that are left over from many, many different societies. I belong to the Kusharti Medicine Society, and this is they're pretty well in order today. And these are basically, right here is where they're called the Warrior Society. They're the guards of all these other, the Kachina systems and the medicine societies. Now, I've taken a lot of research into a lot of the Kachina system, and we have an annual event called the Shalako ceremony, which is a reenactment of the coming of the gods. And these, if you look at it, these are what we call the Shalako. You can look on that on the internet. It's quite a lot of ceremony involved with this, and these are the Shalako. They're about 6 foot tall or more, maybe about 8 feet. And these are what they call the warrior societies. Each color represents the direction. And these are what we call the Kachina Mudheads or the Kachina Clown Society. And it's all reenactment of what happened a long time ago. Of course, in the old days, I mean, way back thousands and thousands of years ago, these were the ones that actually came from the different parts of the universe. And if you look at other tribes throughout the country, I mean, the world, you know, like for example, the Dogons reenact their spacemen in other parts of the world. If you look at some of the Mexican Indian tribes, they have there's a man that's inside, for example, like in the plumed serpent, and in all throughout the whole groups throughout the planet, there's always somebody that's inside of those things that look like masks. And these were, there's another picture that I don't have any actual photographs. I haven't had a chance to reduce those from other books. And here is one of the Kachina gods, and we have an hierarchy in the Kachina system, is what we call the Longhorn. And he is part of the order of the Kachinas that reenact every year in December. And here's a basic illustration of what altars are. If you look at the sun symbol, and in other altars, there's a star that hangs out here, and all these things that in front of them will be what we call the mothers, and these are the mothers, an artist's depiction of the mothers, and they're the ones that all medicine people hold. Now this is a picture of it looks like a UFO, but it looks like more of a sunspot that caused by a camera. I think we analyzed this, and it was not a UFO. But I want to go into the part where all our traditions and all our history is not in any written form. So we have to depend on each other for the traditional teachings and also the ceremonial. There's so many levels. First of all is the everyday language speaking. The second one is when you're in a different order. And the highest order is what we call the priesthood level. So all our system is in oral tradition. And we have reference to a lot of different animals throughout the other tribes too. This is the depiction of a picture of the white buffalo. We used to have buffalo around Zuni many years ago, maybe hundreds of years ago. And of recent is remember the birth of the white buffalo calf woman. So we have been incorporated with other prophecies throughout the whole Indian tribes, throughout the United States and Canada. Now we have a lot of rituals that is year-round, almost on every time that we have a religious activity. It starts out by a cycle. It starts out with a New Year. Our New Year is in the winter solstice, and it goes year-round. And there's many ceremonies that, depending on the season. Now, our Kachina, a lot of you people probably read a lot about the Kachinas. The Hopis were very famous for making the Kachina dolls. And the Kachina is actually a representative of the ancient beings that used to come to the planet from all different parts of the universe. And so when on the Zuni activities year-round, and this represents the different directions of our Zuni universe. And let me go back to, we have, these are in order. We have, if you look at the colors on these are in Zuni, these are the directions. The yellow, the west, the south, the east, the zenith, and the nadir. And these are all part of the system of the Zuni universe, where it depicts all the different colors of the directions. And that's me, some back there. Now, Zuni is the center of many different pueblos. At one time, I think in the Spanish entrada we had, they talked about 7 cities of Cibola, or 7 cities of gold. The word Cibola comes from the word for buffalo, which is Cibola. And when throughout a lot of these names were anglicized, so when they first came over here, they thought it was Cibola. There's a county named after that name, and the Cibola came from the word for buffalo or bison. And so this is if you looked at the other picture, there's that mountain back over here. This is about 1880s under, what is it named, Curtis. And here's an ancient pueblo at one time. This is 1880s. And this part here is still to this day the plaza. That's what we call a Middle Earth. In this, on this part of the wall underneath there's many levels in there. And that's where they call it the heart of the Zuni world. It would be like from what I understand, is that this is where they have their, I would say like some type of it's probably a crystal that sits inside the middle of this place, and only the priesthood are the one that can be allowed to go in there, and they call it the heart of the Zuni world. So it's another grid system, a grid system that is the same way as a crystal. It not only does it receive, but it also transmits our messages to the gods when we do our ceremonies and our spiritual activities. All the activities of the spiritual things are held in this plaza, whether they be the medicine societies, the Kachina societies, the priesthood, and all social activities. So this is the main plaza, and it's called the field, and all the Kachinas refer it to as our garden. So when the Kachinas come into the village, certain times of the year, they bring all the gifts from the universe, and they give it to the people in this plaza when they go through their dances and their rituals by song, by activity. So it's very difficult to explain how this happens to without even having the proper technology to explain it to the Zuni people. The Zuni people know what it's all about, but to explain it back into to the rest of the world, that's where I had a hard time deciphering a lot of these activities and also the concepts into what I call it the other languages. But we all pueblos have in their plazas, they have that activity related to that point to where the gods can come in through the receiving and transmitting areas. So if you look at it from the crystal standpoint, that's what this place is. Now, in the old days, they didn't really have a lot of the artistic temples like they have in other parts of the world, because they were always in migration. They settled this probably in about the same time as the Chaco culture, I would say about 1000 AD. But prior to that, they were all scattered, so they had to combine into 7 villages or thereabouts in order for a lot of different activities. But this is the center part of Zuni. We call it the center world. And here's another. This is right here is what they call the kiva, if you can see. And underneath there, somewhere, they say there's about, people that have been in there, they say it's about, maybe about 2 stories. Now, if you look at the kiva construction, inside of this is the pathway to the universe. And so everything comes down in there. You go to Hopi, you go to other pueblos, they always have this type of configuration or this architectural layout. Inside of it, this ladder will come down, and in front of the ladder will be what they call an altar. And underneath the altar, it's usually a stone slab, like a fireplace. And underneath that altar is a hole that's drilled into the slab that's underneath the ladder, and that's the passageway into the underworld. So when they do activities within the ceremony and other spiritual practices, this is where the priesthood, the leaders of the Kachina society, they actually talk to the gods, and they also request their assistance, and they also give homage and prayers and everything else, and before they do anything. And then during the time they go in there, and after it's done, they also let them, they go back in there, and they go through another ritual to close the ceremonies. So it's quite complicated if you're not don't belong to those orders. Here's one of the people that used to be, in the old days, we used to have a government that was run by the spiritual people. Today we have a constitutional form of government. This is one of the governors. And here, and the next one, this was actually the father of the one that we just saw, and he was one of the great leaders back in the 1800s, during the times of Frank Hamilton Cushing. Each pueblo has their own design of their pottery. A lot of these pottery symbols were derived from many different cultures: the Nimbus culture, the Hohokam culture, and the different Indians that used to be in southern New Mexico. So during my research, I started looking at all the different symbols on there, and all the symbols on all their artifacts are based upon the star systems. A lot of them has been taken away by the museums, and it's been quite hard to get some of those back. This is a typical dress back in the old days. I think I said that last year this was a Democrat, but I think it's now, I think he now belongs to the Tea Party. And these are the ovens that I showed you about. It's an adaptation from the Spanish. Here's another picture of those slabs that stick out here. Inside of this, I've never been there, but all the medicine people and the priesthood have access to. There's a cave underneath here where they also make connection with the gods. What this cave is for is when we kill, say, like a deer or a mountain lion and antelope and so on, the wild game that we use for food. After the rituals, they dress up the skull or a bear. It could be a bear, and they dress him up like a medicine man that we do, and they put him back, and they go have a whole ceremony, and they go up to this mountain, and they take him over here like it's to rest, to make that journey so they can go back into the universe and come back again, so they'll always have their meat for our survival. And there's quite a ritual on this, but there's a whole bunch of skulls in there from way, way back, maybe in the way long time ago. And so they're actually the medicine people. We call them our medicine warriors. When the medicine men do their curing and rituals, they depict those animals, the mountain lion, the bears, eagles, and so on, and they become them, and so they go into their dimension. So when we kill the animals for our food and for the clothing that we wear from them, buckskins, the fur and all that, so we go through that. We only kill for our use only. We don't use them for game or anything like that. So this is one of the places that's quite sacred. Another picture of that. And there's this is a south side of that mountain. And I think it was in 1990, right here, this used to be a pueblo. And this was also in the Spanish, when the Indians were kicking the Spanish out of the present New Mexico, they had to go up here because of what they call the Pueblo Revolt. I think it was 400 years ago. And there's actually some ruins up here that they stayed there for about 100 years. And you go back today, it's pretty hard to get up to, but there's still a lot of artifacts that are pretty well preserved up there. Down here was where one of the pueblos used to be, and let me check the next slide here. There's some slabs that we came across. Oh, this one's here. The only thing that I can figure out was that when the pueblo was over here, when it's intact, these were the slabs that were used as a calendar. And if you recall, in other places like Stonehenge and other places throughout the world, the mountain people and so on, they have a reference to the celestial bodies. And these are still intact. I think this one was taken out some time ago, but there was 6. So this was like a calendar, and the priest, my understanding is that the priest would set back at this rock, and he would during the sun rises, the moon rises, and that's what he was the keeper of the calendar. So I'm still doing a lot of research on that. And eventually I'll go back there and look at the mathematical triangulations and all that to find out exactly what I think that they used them for. And here's another picture of it. If you look, this is going into the northeast side, and this one is missing. I think what happened was that the archaeologists a long time ago, back in about the 20s or 30s, took this out. So there's an indentation in here. For when I was a kid, I used to herd sheep around here. And at that time, I didn't realize that there was such a lot of treasures in that mountain alone. Now this area right here is this canyon runs for about 20 miles in there to the southeast. Now I live down about 2 miles from this point here straight west. Back in about the 70s, when I started living out there on the edge of the pueblo where there's no lights and there's nobody around, but when we were kids, we used to see orbs, giant orbs that used to come around, and I used to ask my grandfather. I was about 10 years old. I said, what are those things? He said, well, they're the ones that are the keepers of the world. When there's going to be good weather or bad weather, they warn us. But if it's good weather, it's going to be good weather, good season. They'll be coming around and, they'll be checking. Let's see what happened to that thing now. They'll be checking around. Let me go back to that slide again. See what I told you about? Okay, our springs and our rituals are based on the south side. And each one of these places going this way, That's where all the springs are at. And I think the reason for those springs is because there's a ley line that goes all around that side. There's none up on the north side. But when they come during to warn us about the weather, or maybe it's going to be high winds or whatever, they'll always come out of this. They'll always come out of this canyon right here. In 1974, I believe it was, we were going to have some very severe weather, and I saw a UFO that started out here. And I thought it was a star at first, and it kept coming around here. It gets slowly out here, and it went up here, then it came back down again towards the village. And I was sitting out there in my yard about 2 o'clock in the morning, and that thing was huge. It must have been, it was a real giant. It wasn't an orb anymore, so it must have been like a flying saucer type thing. I had a friend that I told him about this, and he didn't believe me. Maybe I don't think he believed me, so I took him out there. And when that thing came out, I woke him up about 2 o'clock in the morning. I said, come on out there, look at this thing. He ran out there, and he looked at the thing, and it was coming real slow, and he couldn't handle it. He ran back into the house and put the sheets over, the blanket over him, and says, I don't want nothing to do with this thing. So this happens all the time. Up here, in this part of at nighttime, in this area, go another west a little bit, they have a lot of UFO activities. They look like they're playing like tag. And up here is the routes that go from Albuquerque to Los Angeles, down to Phoenix, and this is where they turn when the airplane takes off to Las Vegas. It takes off toward the southwesterly side or up to the north, but a lot of flights, they used to come back in the 70s. They would come over here and they fly across the Zuni reservation, and then they turn and they go over the Grand Canyon into Las Vegas. When those things were, at that time the fly routes were such that when those UFO guys were playing tag with each other, I mean, they'll be going, I mean, back and forth, and I would always know when an airplane was coming, and all of a sudden they would just freeze and they sit there like they're stars. And after the plane leaves, then they go back to playing tag. It was so fascinating, and people never believed me. But and we have known about UFOs since our teachings. We call them Gathawani, which means the keepers of the mist in the world, the ethereal being world or whatever, the ethereal system. So it's quite an experience to go out there and look at these things. Now there's other pictures of it. See, this is where that canyon I'm telling you about, they come through. In about 1980 or 1970, I have a friend of mine that we've done a lot of work together. He was a young man at that time. They used to make a trip back somewhere around September, August, and they woke up when it had been raining a little bit, and that's the time the UFOs come, where they come through a drizzle rain. And they woke up about, sometime in the evening, maybe midnight or whatever, and they had been sleeping out there in they're camping, backpacking and all that. They woke up, and there was 3 guys that were coming in. It takes about 2 days to walk out of that 25, 26-mile canyon, and they were about halfway. They woke up one night after it had been drizzling, and one of the guys was asleep, but another guy woke up, and he couldn't go back to sleep, so he was looking up in the sky, and all of a sudden the UFO came around and sat above them. And he woke his buddy up, and they were carrying a rifle. I think it was like about a 30-30, I think it was Winchester. And he said, "What is that thing?" He said, "Let me shoot it, see what happens." He said, "No, you're not going to shoot that. We're going to be zapped to death here." So they said that they looked at it for about 5-10 minutes, and it had all the lights that go around, all the different yellow colored lights and so on. And he said that we were so fascinated, and after he left, they said that's when we got scared. And so I told him, even if you try to shoot him, he said you couldn't shoot him because they freeze everything. So this was where that canyon is quite prevalent with UFO activity. There's not a picture of those mountains, the same mountain. I had another slide that it probably didn't register into my this must be a different one. There's a lot of things that I put together the other day, and it doesn't seem to have come out on this one. Again, I'm not a technical person. But going back into the petroglyph part, this is our written, language in stone, if you want to call it that. A lot of these petroglyphs are about the similar throughout the whole country. And if you look at some features on ancient aliens, some of them are basic all over the world. One of the things about the emergence theory or mythology is that when the people were formed into functional human beings, they had 6 digits, 6 toes, 6 fingers. And they even talk about, the Zunis even talk about, we had tails when we came out. And so this was, in some petroglyphs, you'll see 6-digit hands, feet, and other times that you'll see look like tails, but they're not tails. It must have been some type of appendage at that time. And these are pictures. Now, there's a scientific theory about this. They have these 2 spots on each side, but there was a depiction of some type of a heavenly being or a heavenly body at that time when they used to see that. It's a very highly scientific research on that. A person from Los Alamos Nuclear Labs did that for a number of years. So I haven't gotten around to putting it in my slides. Now, there's a lot of different celestial stuff, like here's, for example, the stars, the different planets. One of the things that's interesting is that you've probably seen this in other petroglyphs throughout the world, is this whole thing about, one of the things that they depict on here was the crab nubili back in I think it was in the 1200s, whenever that was. But again, the other thing too is that back in the old days, they talk about the supernovas, and they call it the starburst, for lack of a better word, or maybe those are interpretations. So these are all over the reservation. This is on the west side of the village. These are kind of, there's all kinds of different depictions. Maybe they're animals, and here we have this, looks like some type of an animal. I think I got it on this film here. There's a lot of these rock drawings have been added on, and like this one here, even though it's way high up, you can see that it has been kind of worked on. So because of the sandstone, it deteriorates real fast, even though these are under shelter. So it's very difficult to determine whether it's recently made or it was part of the whole drawing system in the old days. The only way that we can figure that out was because if this is over about 10 feet high or maybe 6 feet high, It's very difficult to go up on a vertical cliff and start scratching it all by yourself. But I think this was all due to erosion. This line was due to the rain and the wind and so on, because this is sandstone. Other ones are based on lava rock. But these are stories or records of what the ancients believed in or saw at that time. There's so many of them all over. Here's one that this looks like an animal, but it had to be something. And when the grandfathers used to tell me that these are the beings or things that they saw in the sky, and this was as close to depiction of what they saw up in the sky. So if you look at that, you got little antennas sticking out, look like little arms, but because they were here on the earth, that's the only way they can describe it at that time. And then if you go into the ancient language, the prayer systems, that's where actually they talk about the details of who or what these things are. Here's another one of them. See, a lot of these are up in the air, and they have been overlaid. For example, here, this was put in later on after this one here, so you can see how they go up there, and this is sort of like, this was added on later on the ones that were already there. And it's very hard to decide, what are these things here? And so if you look at it, if you look at the celestial bodies of some kind, there's 3 of them over here. And there's a lot of references to Orion's belt, Pleiades, and other celestial bodies. So it's here's another rock drawing. Again, here's this thing here. Plagues, and we've been studying this for a long time now, and it's hard to decipher because there's no history. And those people that knew, now here's one thing that's common throughout the reservation or the part of the country. Looks like a bar. There's 2 of them here, and either they're ascending or descending. And when I first looked at this thing, I thought they were like dancing. And then when I started looking into it in a deeper meditation, I came to the conclusion that when they came down, they came in 3 at a time, and there's 6. Remember I said the Zuni universe has 6. So they represent perhaps the directions, and they're all grouped together. You go to other places, they're all grouped together. So this looks like some type of either going into what we call the rock roof, which is the atmosphere, or they're coming back and forth into that different realms. So that's quite an interesting one. Now here's one that it took me a long time to figure it out until that guy in Jaime Maussan out of Mexico, remember he's got photographs of UFOs that are like strings. And this is really, the configurations are those is that, that it goes back and forth. And this is a horizontal one, and here's a vertical one. And these have been seen now in many different parts of the world. Now, in the 1880s report by I think it was an ethnologist report of 1929, a lady by the name of Ruth Bonzo, which wrote a book on the Kachinas. And she talks about what the Zunis told her at that time is that these are what they call in Zuni word means kathawane, the one that I said a while ago about the one that takes care of the springs through the different the points on the Zuni world where they come through the grid system. Now this one of them like this was seen in 1929, and she describes it as a dirigible or like an icicle. An icicle, and then at that time, I think the closest one would have been a dirigible. So this is what the ancients used to see up there during when they used to come. Here's another one here that is inside of this one. When we were looking at this, then the height from here to the ground is about at least 10 feet. And these are up in the air, and so it'd be very difficult for somebody to etch that within the last 200-300 years. Now we talk about dinosaurs or giant animals in Zuni, and there were giants in those days according to our history. This is some type of an animal. And if you look at this thing, it's a picture of a man. It could be a picture of a man or something. It's held in its mouth, and it's the size of it and the one that's hanging right here. And if you look on this right-hand side here, there's that other being that was on those bar. It's the same configuration as the ones on that bar here, and they're all around here too. So those must have been celestial bodies of some sort, and that's how they. Here we go again. There's two more side by side. You can see that right here, and it also has those connectors of some sort. And these are the ones that are also like, like as if they're going up or down. And here's one that you've seen all over the world. Whether it's in Asia, China, South America, or whatever. This is the same configurations. The ancient temples have this. And they're all over the reservation, this whole three spiral thing. And they're all interconnected. I'm still doing a lot of research on that, on what they represent. It's very hard because the people that knew the background of those are no longer here, and they never passed it on because, again, we didn't have the ways to convey it, maybe photography or whatever. Because up until about I'd say about in the 50s, taking pictures, recordings were very well prohibited by the old people. The only ones that got through were the anthropologists and archaeologists, ethnologists, and so on. And there's a lot of photographs that has survived throughout the years, and then in 1970s, I believe it was, the last surviving, for example, in my society, he said, we cannot go on forever because it's very difficult to learn all the different songs, chants, prayer, rituals, whatever. So he was the last of the old people in my society to say, okay, you even though we restricted it for years, we're going to now let this continue. And they told us told my medicine society people, you got to make recordings. So we have the old reel-to-reel tapes, recording tapes that are locked away, and that's where we got all our rituals. It took a long time for them to convince themselves that we cannot continue on because the rituals are very hard. So there's a lot of this information that has survived, and that's what we're re-upping today. And as you well know, if something is sacred, it's pretty hard you'll come back around again. So these are some of the information systems that they have interpreted. Now this is a very interesting petroglyph. You know, when we first looked at this, we didn't see it the first time we went around there, but when the sun changed, we went back the second day, and we were walking around there, and this thing just popped up in front of us. If you look at it, it's got little arms, real short feet, and look at the neck, and right here, and the eyes. And here's a fool, that's at a different angle. And it looks like the present day gray, what we call the gray. And here's where it's an ET shape. Of course, we have a lot of information background on the ETs. And here's another shot of that. Now, the depth down to the floor level, and right here is where the erosions first started, I believe, and this one is still high above to where even if they went ahead and somebody put that on there. So when we looked at it, so I went back and asked a lot of my godfathers. I said, "Oh yeah, that's what we call the people that came to us at certain intervals in history." And so that's the one that was probably put to, I don't know how many thousands of years old that is, but they're all over the reservation. One of the places that I used to go, right that first mountain we talked about on the east side, was there's actually a rock drawing of a UFO that's coming in at a sharp angle. In a place called A.R.E, New Mexico, where there's got it's a monument east of Zuni. There was a whole wall that showed ancient Zuni. Ancient Zuni had a big lake, and you can see, they said that they had a lot of UFO rock drawings on that piece of rock, that part of that mountain. And it caved in about probably, I'd say in the early 70s. So only portions that were left. Either it caved in or somebody blew it up. And we kind of figured it must have been the Forest Service. So there's a lot of information that has been taken away by destruction and deliberate destruction. Some of these are just remnants of what the total system used to be. So that's going on even to this day. Now here's one thing that is prevalent throughout the whole rock drawings. And at first I thought that, well, it's got to be a mountain range. And then I started thinking about it. This looks like some type of a configuration of some type of messages that are received. And here's another one here that's also, if you look at it from that, could be a supernova. And here's one that was that was quite interesting. What we were looking for, this canyon is what they call Hardscrabble Canyon. It's it's west of Zuni, where in mythology, that's where it made the clans that I showed you a list on. In this canyon, it's got all the drawings of all the different clan people. A lot of people spend a whole bunch of time deciphering all these are like panels. And many years ago when I was doing this thing, they said each one has a historical reference. And they do it by either the star locations or the time of that era when they put this in there. That's the only thing that I can decipher. Now there's a lot of information systems. Now we're talking about the Kachinas, and this is what we call the knife wing god. A lot of your Indian tribes have the thunderbird. This is equivalent to the thunderbird. This is made in jewelry form, and we call him the knife wing god. This is a celestial being, and the reason they call him a knife wing god was because he used to, like a flint or some type of a fire-producing material, that when he came through the sky, he would create a lot of electrical charges, a lot of lightning. So this is also one of the gods of the universe that used to come onto the planet, and the Zunis have a big history on that. Here's one of the Kachinas that, again, set into a jewelry setting. A lot of our Kachinas have this thing on their heads. Even the medicine man, this is a plume. The medicine man also uses the plume as on their heads when they're performing ceremony. And all Kachinas have some type of, you might want to call it antenna. And some of the jewelry that the Zuni is famous for. Somebody asked me one time, how come you don't wear Zuni jewelry? I said, because I couldn't afford one. So these are some of I started out to be a silversmith. Both my parents and my family were silversmiths. And I was too lazy. Takes too much work. I'd rather be an engineer, you know. And these are some of the designs that are existing to this day. I want to spend more time with your questions and answer. I think it's appropriate that you ask.
Can you describe some of your insights about the Zuni's relationships to the extraterrestrial beings that are represented in the Kachinas, and what their meaning is for the Zuni today?
The Zuni depiction of the Kachina is that those are the ethereal beings from different parts of the universe. In the original, after the world was created where we are at, they're the ones that have always been here. And long time ago, I don't know how many thousands, could have been millions of years ago, the actual beings used to come into the Zuni with the Zuni people. The reason that they went into a Kachina was because between the priesthood of the Zuni people and the Kachina world, which were the extraterrestrials, priesthood of the Zuni people and the priesthood of the extraterrestrials came to a truce, saying that yes, we'll come, but we'll come we'll come with you, but we'll be invisible. So that's the reason that they went into the Kachina society. Now, if you look back at history, there has been no mask that has been found in the ancient culture, so it must have been pretty recent, maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. If that was the case, they would have found out that masks were made because they can survive for a long time. So this was quite recent in human history that the extraterrestrials had to become invisible when they come in here. Well, they become visible a lot of times, but that's on certain doings that they do, especially in the medicine orders. So we're conduits of the healing practices that were given by many different civilizations throughout the universe. And the same way with the medicine people, we're conduits. We only use their technologies, and they gave us those technologies. A lot of that has to do with crystals. We use a lot of crystal technology. Some of those artifacts are quite old. I try to figure out how old they are, and they told me that they've always had them. So this is way, way before, and they still got them to this day. Does that answer your question? Any other questions?
Is the Four Corners area actually a portal that makes it easy for star beings, so to speak, to come in?
Well, there's many portals. It depended on what part of the universe you're from. There are so many portals and there are so many vortices. And they're all over Arizona, they're all over New Mexico that we know of in our teachings. There's a lot of things that have occurred within the last 200 years. When the white man first came about, they knew about these things. They found out about these things, and that's why they destroyed a lot of things. And because that was against what their mission was, God, gold, and glory. So that's when they started destroying a lot of things. The Smithsonian had a lot to do with it. And throughout my studies and throughout my connection with them, a lot of those portals that the ancient ones, they left. Chaco Canyon is one of them. And a lot of people do not realize that throughout the history there has been some light forces. And that was also predicted by the ancients. Later on, they opened them up. The pyramids are a good example. Certain parts in Mexico, they opened those up. And they also knew about these things. And once they're opened up, yes, there's a lot of places throughout the Southwest that we are familiar with that are portals. So my research and my conclusions is because the big guys are way up there, thousands, millions maybe, up there, but those are the ones that dropped. It's just like any other logical system. But in our way of thinking, we've always had that. When they come as orbs, they come as flying saucers, they come in like dirigibles. And I have so many experiences with different types of UFOs. So that was probably a surveillance in Roswell, because it was a small one compared to the big ones. And it's been going on ever since. The Zunis is a civilization that adopted a lot of different tribes. Because if you look at the history of Chaco, Mesa Verde, over here at Sedona, down south, the Hohokam, the Nimbus, the Mogollon people, there was such a crossroads at Zuni. And we also had our brothers and sisters to the south and up to the north, and it was quite a civilization at that time. The recent satellite photos show all the network that they had. Of course, a lot of it was already destroyed by the time the satellites went up, but they put it together. So I would say that there was more than that. At one time, I've estimated that there was just about the teachings and the rituals, there must have been at least 25 different pueblos. And the Zuni were there at the same time as the Chaco culture, which folded up probably in about the 1500s. And Zuni was one of them. They call it the House of the Great, they call it Yellow House. Back in about 1400. There's history of the Celts. There's history of the Orientals. The Orientals actually lived right next to Zuni behind that big mountain I talked about. And there's a book out by a person by the name of Nancy L. Davis, if you want to look at that background. It's called the Zuni Enigma. And the Zuni Enigma, she talks about that group. And so I went back and researched that, and the grandfathers told me that, yes, there was a civilization outside of Zuni. They were what we call the Little White people, which are the Orientals. They helped the Zunis fight the Spanish, and they had such an advanced techniques when the Spanish shoot them with their ball and musket or whatever, they haul them back into their caves and they resuscitate them. Here they come back around again, the same guys that they shot, and they revive them back up. And so this is a very thorough history on those people, and they left probably right before the Spanish took over, and they're gone. They probably went back into wherever they came from, probably the Orient or somewhere. But that's really interesting because there was no interaction, intermarriage or anything with those people. They kept to themselves. They've probably been the same order as the Dalai Lama group, you know, the Tibetans. But thank you very much.